All right, what is going on, guys? It is time for another episode of the Chasing Waypoints podcast. And this time around, we've got a review show. We've got a recap show. And I've been meaning to get this one out, but it's time to do it. It is... You guys are listening to this at 10 a.m. It is 5:50 in the morning. I am 10 minutes away from Wheels Up at the ranch and headed down to the 6-day Baja Rally event. Going to be down there a couple of days, just hanging out with the guys. Coming back, chaperoning, doing maybe some tracking and stuff like that here stateside. So, but I don't know if you guys can hear it in my voice. I've literally just woken up, but we're going to make this one happen. We've got a special episode for you guys today. We have got number one and two. That is D.Pearson and M.Johnson, fresh off the Cotah rally. Gavin Ferguson going to be coming up on a separate episode on his own. Definitely want to talk about his experience at the Cotah rally, but also his journey into rally. So both D.Pearson and M.Johnson, no stranger to rally raid and getting out in the world. So I definitely want to get those guys out, get you guys out there. It's going to be a little bit longer of an episode. So I hope you guys are ready for this one. And also, if you are following along, make sure you are on the Instagram. We're going to be bringing updates live to you from the event. Thank you, and brought to you by none other than Starlink. That sounded way too much a commercial. Elon doesn't even do marketing stuff. Like, he just, here's my badass product. Use it. Do as you will. So anyway, with that being said, guys, I hope you guys enjoyed the episode. We will see you guys next Sunday for the next Sunday. I think it's going to be Baja Rally recap. I'll be down there talking to some of the guys. I'll get some of the interviews. I'll get you guys some more content from that, but do make sure you are following along on Instagram, because that is where we are headed. By the time you are listening to this, we should be landing in San Quintin for the first bivouac, which is going to be the scrutineering and technical inspection, and then the start of day one. So stay tuned for more. Like I said, I hope you guys enjoy the episode. Hey guys, what's going on? Super quick break in the podcast episode. I hope you guys are enjoying. I just wanted to mention really quick, I've been using the Anchor.fm platform for all of the podcast distribution and everything, and it is very, very simple. So if you guys have been thinking about getting into your own podcast, doing your own thing, talking about your own adventures and what you've got going on your side of the planet, it is very, very simple. All you got to do is go down to your app store, whatever that may be, if it's Android or if it's on Apple. Download the Anchor app, or you can also go to anchor.fm, create an account, and get started. It is super, super simple. So anyway, with that being said, back to the episode.
Connection is, but this sounds good.
Yeah, it does. Actually, it's like I said, yeah, it's definitely clear. So, okay. You were traveling just out of the Cotah rally.
I am. I wrapped up the Cotah and had an extra day here and did a little messing around with the girl, and we packed up and we're heading to Arizona to park for 6 months while we prep for the Dakar and other races.
Nice. Very nice. So, okay. I got it from everybody. I got messages while I'm out of town, like, dude, this rally was like, from a few different guys. So tell me, how did it go? What was it like?
Fundamentally, it was awesome. I mean, what Mike Graves and Scott and Brian put together, given what they had to work with, was pretty cool. There was definitely a couple of annoying speed zone sections that we all had to muscle through, but it was also a really good experience for time management and race time management. And I thought that was a new added strategy that came into the game with this race. But you could, from a rally perspective, Victor, you couldn't have got a different one, right? I mean, everything we do down in the Baja and Mexico is sand wash and sand dunes and rock face and just in and out. And here, the first big notice you have is like the trees, like you go through trees, and he routed us through not quite single track, but 2-track ATV type trail. It was extremely challenging, very technically rocky. It was certainly probably the slowest speed average rally I'd ever done. I don't think my bike ever saw sixth gear, but it was all technically beautiful and rugged one. I mean, we shed a couple of people the first day, and then there were certainly a couple of days that kind of went through the flow of us making it. Weather definitely played a big factor, and so we had some pretty crazy rain days in the big thing, and so it was an overall. I was impressed. I had day 2 was a bit mind-numbing with some speed zones that we had to deal with just going through some of Grand County into Moab, and so that wore you out a little bit. But it also taught you how to manage everything from P breaks to getting through traffic and dealing with stops and some of those things. So it was I was impressed. I give those boys credits for what they do. I don't know how deep you want to get into it, because I was just looking through notes and some of the day-by-day activities in the big picture. So I'm not sure how much you want to talk about this.
No, well, I mean, your experience. I mean, at the end, and first of all, we'll stop it there, picking up the overall win on this officially. So 25 hours, 57 minutes, and 24 seconds, all in. So, I mean, it sounds like some of the feedback that I've gotten has been based around that, the speed zones. But I think, where a lot of people want to race, how do you see that? I mean, is it an important thing, to learn how to manage these speed zones and do that, or how does that work out?
I mean, if you thank you, the win was challenging, and if you look at number 2 for 25 hours, the spread difference was, I don't know, it was less than 3 minutes, wasn't it?
It is exactly 2 minutes and 30 seconds. M.Johnson.
Yeah. So, Johnson and I had quite the event together, and to run 25 hours of track time racing and still have a a time separation of less than 3 minutes was, tells you something, right? Mm-hmm. So Mike is amazingly good at time, speed management on some of the speed zone stuff. And then when it got technically tough and difficult, it became very hard to keep at that speed zone limit. Mm-hmm. And so you had to manage your terrain riding correctly. And there were clearly areas where Mike Graves routed us into ATV trail, and we couldn't maintain those speed limits, and it was just give it what you got, Mm-hmm. And then there were other times where we'd get on some just hard baby head, jagged rock roads that you could keep the bike just up to speed limit. So, you'd be banging off the speed sensor sound siren, and knowing, when you came out of that little field into the little, plateau and the thing, that you really couldn't crank it, Mm-hmm. And so you'd come out of that treat area in the rocks, and you'd blop the throttle, right up to the speed zone, and you'd roll with it, Mm-hmm. And, so it was a slightly different, well, it wasn't slightly, it was definitely a different way to run the race. I think a lot of guys that do normal rallies around at least Mexico and some around the world would love this event because of its technical challenge, mm-hmm. its terrain, the visual aspects are phenomenal. And just to be able to rip your bike through, just hard, wet rock, roots, dark dirt. Most rally guys don't see dark dirt like we see. We just don't see dark dirt,
Arid desert, sand dunes.
Yeah, I mean, day one he put us out on day one, which was a long day. It was a 240-kilometer day. Mm-hmm. Johnson, another guy, Warren Healy. Warren Healy, I think, runs Endurotech suspension down in Denver. He overhauled it last year. Mm-hmm. Really fast guy. And then this kid, mid-30s guy named Constantine wrapped us, I think, pulled up top 5, and we all looked at him and like, what? Because we all walked over, and he had a kickstart only Yamaha with barely enough fuel to survive, and a battery operated road book siren rally comp ICO package. Everything was fully battery operated, and I walked over and I'm like, nice job. And I'm like, and you made it, and the equipment made it. And his equipment made it the whole day. He did a great job the whole week. We were real impressed for a guy that had never rallied before and showed up with battery operated equipment that he was able to accomplish the whole feat. So he took 5th on day 1, and then we kind of missed him a couple of days, and then he magically pulled up on day 4th into 3rd place and finished behind Johnson and I, and we kept, shoulder checking. This is a guy to watch coming into some of the Mexico rallies, I think,
Mm-hmm. Man, and it's good. I mean, it sounds like we got more newcomers. I hadn't seen that name before, but I'm looking at the times on the Cotah Rally Instagram and seeing some of the stuff. And man, yeah, you and Johnson really did go back and forth on it.
Day 4 was it day 4 or day 3? It was day 3. Day 3, he put us into some OP sections, and those, it's hard enough to get OP in the United States. And so he found us some OP here and there, and he had a couple of really good long OP sections on day 3 that got most everybody. I got really lucky, and I just managed to keep and connect into my waypoints. I think they had 400-meter radiuses, so they weren't the easiest ones to connect to. And Johnson took a couple of penalties, and it really put us into the game for the last day 4 and day 5. It was interesting in the pits, and it was we both entered into a Bentonite hill on day 4. I led out at the Cotah guys did some crazy different types of starts. They had the computer do a randomizer, and we all started under a randomizer based off of what the computer generated. They had a day where they let out worst to best. They had a day where they let out worst guy, last guy, best guy, second last, second best. And so the change-up of orders was pretty cool. On day 4, I got out second and quickly got up on front and got into this hill that just dropped me right to the ground. And I was wearing my brand new Alpenstar Air Vest, which totally went off for me.
Nice.
So that was an experience that I kind of wanted to understand before I got to the Dakar. I just really didn't want it to happen,
Yeah. No,
so,
sure.
Yeah, and I stood up and I was, a completely inflated, arm, chest, back, neck. And I'm like, what the hell just happened, right?
Yeah.
So, that was pretty crazy. And then it slowed down, and then Johnson caught up to me, and we got into the mud section. So we worked together and got out, and then continued along on our race. And I think coming in day 4, there was 6.5 minutes separating us leaving day 4. So, with a 120 kilometer day, and at that point, my goal was to just be smooth and stable and hold on and not let him pick up time. And I was leading out, so it was some added challenge. So I let out all day, and just in my brain going, I know Johnson's fast and he's 2 minutes behind me, and at some point he's going to catch me. And, and he did, he caught me, but he caught me into the pavement coming back into the Montrose Fairgrounds as we finished. So it was pretty cool. We got to finish together, and Mike and I have been racing for a long time. I've never bested the man, and so it was a great race for both of us. It was a great race for me. It was a great race for everybody. It's cool. I had a lot of fun.
No, it looks. It looks like it. I mean, just looking at the times, yeah. You guys, stage 1, 6 and 7, so 13 minutes apart. He was faster, and then the next day, 10 minutes, he was faster. And then, yeah, just like you said, stage 3, 15 and 25, 35 minutes. In that in those penalties, so that was the game changer. There was day 3. So man, I can imagine what the bivouac was like. I know you two when you guys are in the bivouac. So
we don't bicker quite as bad as him and my brother Jim, but we do throw it down a little bit, and done with good love. It's been it's just great riding with him. And we had a couple guys like Gavin Ferguson was a good solid talent and had come into it. He just started rallying. I think he was down at Sonora for the first time. Warren Healy, who I think overall the best in the desert Vegas to Reno 500 a couple years ago. Did this one this year. I think he had a pretty solid face plant into his whole rally comp equipment on day 3 or 4 that slowed him down a little bit. And I think he pulled in, I'm not looking at the stats, but I think he pulled in 4th overall, but he was in and out of it all week for us as well too. So, and the crazy thing for me, and the best part of this, or at least a huge part of it, was it was all Malimoto. We were living in a box, dealing with our own tent, our own food, our own cooking supplies, our own mechanical. We had the good graces of the Freedom Rally support truck there, and they were awesome. There was things they were just limited to do, but the things that they were capable to provide us, which was, some tools, a place to stay, to really work on stuff. And so we had a lot of guys that got through the effort of that race with the help of the Freedom crew. So what the boys did there with Scotty and Robert and Ashton was awesome, and so that was really kind of neat, So, nice. I was surprised. It was a big tester for me. I tested all my equipment for Dakar, so the climb gear was phenomenal. Their helmets are top notch, and so it was really kind of breaking in the whole jacket, pants, and internal combos, and so it was. It was a good, smooth day. I was just looking to go enjoy myself, and it ended up being a solid day for me. So I can't complain.
Nice. And so, I mean, that was something that I was going to ask you guys, because I just saw that they had one of their recent Instagram posts. They posted some different gear that they've got. It's like they're going more for that shell type thing, less padding in it, but then you wear the armor underneath. What do you guys use? What's the Dakar setup for you guys? What helmet, what pants, jacket, if I wanted to go buy it?
Yeah, for us from the climb side of it, we're wearing the F5 helmets. Well, I have an F3 right now that I've been testing. It's a little bit lighter than the F5, but doesn't have the same internal padding. The F5s will be the helmets we use at the Dakar. And then we're really sporting pretty much the Dakar series from Climb. Jacket, pants, gloves. We've been experimenting with inner liners, but to your point, the Dakar, I was testing the Alpenstar body airbag vest. Climb has one too that's next up on my list to test out here at the Baja or the Sonora. And then based on how those tests goes, we'll figure out what happens at the Dakar. But to have the vest go off and the jacket was just right and tight and fitted enough that it handled it all. So, the Dakar jacket took some weathering up here because it's, we got rain 3 out of the 5 days and we all got soaked. And so I carried a little their inversion kind of rain jacket that went into the back pocket of the Dakar jacket. Put that on a couple times and was well taken care of as far as wind and rain goes. So it was a good kit. Their gloves and goggles are just top notch. They really make quality stuff. I can't even begin to tell you how impressed I've been with just the build, where the zippers are. They thought through stuff, So, we talked, there's no water pocket on the Dakar jacket, which was an initial concern for us. But I think between the two air vests that have them, it won't be really an issue. And they'll work pretty well, So, so it was good equipment testing for sure.
Nice. And so, water pocket, like for time cards and stuff like that, is that what you're talking about, or?
Camelback pocket, 3-liter packet. So there isn't one on the Dakar jacket, which was originally a concern, but the way that the vest is designed, they carry the water. And so, that it all seems to work. So it was part of my break-in for that. I'm like, some of it's just the routine you get into every day, right? Like you finish the day and what do you do, right? I mean, for me, I went right into the mode of repacking my jacket with all the food and supplies, refilling my water, setting up tent, getting all my stuff in there, and then eating again, going into the maintenance department. Because the Cotah was what it was, we were all playing the DOT game. And so 2 out of the 5 days I managed to rotate the rubber on the rim a little bit, enough to tweak my air stems on both tires just from braking. And so I had to pop the beads on the rims and reset the tubes and reinflate and keep on going. So I did that twice over the 5 days, Nice. So it was just so rocky, it was just your wheels were taking a beating, and my DOT tires survived the entire trip. probably are concrete enough to survive a couple more rallies. I hope I don't have to use them, but they did the job, you know?
Nice. Yeah, that was something that a lot of people kind of mentioned about the Cotah rally. That, all these rules because of the DOT stuff and all of that stuff. I mean, was there really any kind of hindrance? Like, I mean, anything that you were like, this really, really sucks. Like, it would cause you to not want to run it? I mean, that may be a touchy question, but.
Yeah, and I think the last minute thing that just came from government officials that the organization had to deal with was in Grant County, which is kind of part of the whole Moab life. Was they put a EPA OEM exhaust restriction on us. So for me, it was a struggle just to say, oh my God, do I have my stock exhaust? Which I did. And I put it on and I'm like, wow, it's really quiet. So I didn't even use earplugs for the event. And the bike performed really well. So, I humped my mirror and my horn on. We didn't, by requirement, we didn't need to have turn signals. Unfortunately, I made a high-low beam kind of operate. And so I got past that hump. I think the biggest scary thing for me I was worried about was just tires, right? Because I was just... After you rally a while, you get so used to having moose bibs, and so you gain a level of confidence, right? I mean, you just, in the desert, you look at that cactus and you say, "Screw it, I'm going to hit it. Doesn't matter." And in the rock sections, you're just not so worried about the pinch flats, and so that changes when you do this race because you have to manage tires. And you have to make sure that you can survive it. There were guys that were fixing flats on the trail, and I knew that this was a time event, and it was going to play down to any mechanical stop was going to put you back on the clock. And so, it was a big thing for me every night to just go through the bike and make sure there was nothing that was going to stop. I had a gear shift that started to loosen up, and so I caught a couple things early in the game that did it. Midway through day 3, something started vibrating on my bike, like just humming, like just freaking me out, like, something's going to break. I thought it was transmission. I stopped twice. I couldn't figure it out, and then about 30K into the, annoying vibration, the mirror or the glass on my mirror let go, and everything calmed down again. And I'm like, oh, thank God. Yeah. And so I ran the event without a mirror, which was what it was. But I was like, so there were a couple of pieces of equipment on your bike that you're not normally used to, but it's fairly easy to get over the hump, and it's worth the terrain. It's worth the camaraderie, the camping in the mountains. It's totally worth that type of Malimoto experience here. I look forward to the tweaks and the twists that Mike and Scott put onto it next year, and I'm fairly confident I'll be involved in some capacity because it was well worth it. It was well worth it.
Nice, yeah, and that's from what you're describing and what your experience was, is that it does sound like the rally, like the experience, right? And this really does, for a lot of people that do want to go racing and really crack it open and do all that stuff, like, you won't be able to do that, but it's the game of chess. This rally sounds like a lot more of that than anything else, and managing everything, mechanical.
Yeah, it was funny for me. And I guess I'm getting a little old, Victor, but for me, it boiled down to P brakes. Right. Like the first day I wasn't really thinking. I got up on the ride, did my thing. And my wife and I have been working on nutrition for the Dakar. And so this was also a test for me to try a whole bunch of nutritional supplements. So I've never been a guy to do powders or, pop supplements. I've just never been that guy. And so I said, but I knew at the Dakar, I'm going to have carbo reload shakes in the morning, after riding, and an Energizer shake in the morning and some of those things. So I started doing that. So I was pounding water and liquid early into the game. And so I got on the first day and I had to stop 3 times to pee. Right. And I'm like, oh my God. And I finished the day and, we were separated. Mike and I were separated by 6 or 7 minutes. I'm like, those were all P minutes for me. And the next day, I had to stop a couple times. And day 4, I stopped. And then day 5, we were, everything was tight, and we were 5.5 minutes. And I'm like, my God, I'm not going to stop, and it's 120K and about 80K in. I'm like, I got to go pee. Yeah. And then you got to make a tough decision in life. Mm-hmm. Do you stop or don't you stop? Yeah. So,
or do I deal with this the rest of the day? Well,
yep. Oh no, I peed twice that day. I didn't stop once, but I did pee twice. So
then it gives me and I've seen it, and I just haven't been able to confirm, but I do think that some guys are out there wearing the catheters, and they've got some kind of hole, or somehow they've gotten it through the pants on top of the boot or before the boot. So
yeah, I saw the kid. If you remember our last podcast together, some of the funny moments that we had was we all started talking about butt management, mm-hmm. And I think people forget the other sensitive conversation, which is pee management. Mm-hmm. And I ran into one of the guys on the rally who was a pediatric doctor, sharp guy. I'm going to try and remember his name, and I believe it was Mike. Mm-hmm. And he was sporting the full catheter condom tube. Mm-hmm. So we talked through the kit. I'm probably going to order it. I'm going to try him for Baja or Sonora because because if you're 30, I guess you can make it. And when you're 50, things in your life change, and, vibrating a motorcycle for hours on time does something. So I'm going to try it. I'll give you feedback here after the next couple rallies if you and your audience wants that disgusting type of conversation. There's some width measurements and stuff.
Yeah, no, it's the things that people don't, that don't understand, or some of the stuff like, well, what happens when you have to pee? Well, you get 2 choices. Now 3 if you go with the catheter route. But I mean, I hear you. I've been in a race car, getting jostled around, and it's like, I should not have drank all that water, and it is life choices.
Right. And the guy driving the race car, he's not stopping for you. I can tell you that. No. So, hard enough. I had 2 guys on my shoulder riding down the race, the white one and the red one going, just keep going. He's like, no, stop. Mm-hmm. So it was one of those days. To the good credit, one of our sponsors for the ARO side of the game was Seat Concepts. So they were kind enough to produce a set of seats for us for our race endeavors. So they did a great job, and thank God I had them, because they did, to run a stock seat would have been a mess at that type of event. Same thing with the Dakar.
Yeah, I know. I hear you. Well, and that's something that on the 501 that I've been looking at. I got the fancy Sello de la Valle seat cover, because I wanted it to look factory, but I'm looking at this thing. It's a 2x4. I mean, literally, this is a 2x4 with a foam sprinkling on there. The Seat Concept seat, was it anyone in particular? Or is it like just more of a custom one where it's still narrow, but just taller?
The boys were awesome. Robert and Austin, the gang, there's a couple different variations. And so, even our group of 5 guys have their own, likes, Mo likes a little softer. Jim likes it super firm. And so, but we designed an initial base for the RFRs correctly. And so they raised them about a 3/4 of an inch for us. And then at the back, they shapen them out almost to the shape of the gas tanks. So they become useful in high-speed gripping, and the backs are flat enough that when you are sitting on them for liaison sections, they're really comfortable. So the overall design of them was factored around the shape of the RFRs. So they really did customize them, and they're a little bit. Mine is a firm +1, and it's a little bit more firm than a standard factory one. Okay. It's a little bit taller for my 6'2" frame, but it's far more comfortable than the plank you get on the stock. Stock is what stock is. They build them for a stock guy, and that's rarely any of us.
Yeah, exactly. No, well, that's good. I mean, because I got a feeling you guys are going to spend some hours on these bikes.
Yeah, the other grief I got a little bit was for 25 years I've been using an auto clutch, so I run a Recluse system in my bike, mm-hmm. and here in the Rockies is where it really plays in well, because I don't, as much as I never saw sixth, I don't know if I ever saw first either. But I can tell you I grunted up some hills in second gear with, full rock debris everywhere that I think ultimately played well to my ability to survive that and to come out of it still feeling comfortable and not tired,
Nice. That's good. I mean, that is not common either. You don't see very many people running the Recluse out down in Baja or any of the other places. They're all on the standard, basically a standard setup.
Yeah, I'll be running Recluse at the Dakar this year. So I've had the boys have stepped up, and I've been using them for so long. They've designed a system. It's been proven at the Dakar more than once over the years, and so I will be running that, contrary to the arguments my brother and I may have about it. So, there's lovers and haters to that system, and I think my brother and I are certainly those guys, and so we have our debates usually over a whiskey somewhere deep into a dinner, so
I always like the idea of left-hand rear brake, to get, but I don't know.
I totally have it. I have. Yeah, and I have been so close over the years of buying that left-hand brake kit. I had one of the initial systems even before Recluse was in business. It was there was another company called Revlock, and so I had one of those initial ones. And when Recluse came out, they put out some new tech, and you could get the brake lever, but they also provided you a clutch. And so I still use the clutch in a lot of capacities, and so I really haven't been able to let go of the clutch. And replace it with the brake or add to. I think that's just too much brain power for me. Yeah.
No, I hear you. Yeah, they. I actually. So on the 501, and I think you guys ran up to her. I bought Donnie Reddington's old 501 that she used a lot as a motomedic down at Baja Rally, and she had an aux brake set up on it. It's basically a little hydraulic cylinder that replaces the Heim joint on the rear brake cylinder. Or rear brake master, and with a mountain bike brake lever. So it's a really clever setup, and I was just curious, with having a Recluse, I think that might be kind of the setup, because I feel like you're going to have more control in certain spots where it is tricky, or being able to do certain maneuvers, sliding the bike and stuff like that. What is it? Sliding to the left. Bike sliding out, stepping out to them, where the rear brake would be on the low side.
Yeah, sliding out to the right. But yes, I think that would be one of the key places that would make sense. And in really tough technical terrain, like I occasionally freewheel down some of the hardest of stuff, and so sometimes having the two brakes up top like a bicycle, although reversed, would play. But again, I'm still so in love with the clutch capacity that the Recluse provides me. The only thing I really use predominantly, it just doesn't allow me to stall anymore, and I can second, third gear, rear brake lock it up into corners.
Yeah, and not have to worry about it or killing the engine and then having it bump start again on its own as you let go.
Totally, yeah, I agree. So it's just one of those, it is where it is, and I think the technology is good enough. I just don't want to mess with it. I'm not ready to add another brain component to my, muscle memory to try and figure out. Oh my God, was that the clutch lever or the brake lever?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that could be a little bit. You're either going to get the bike to power up even harder, or get that front wheel off the ground, or you're going to slide it. One or the other. So nice. Well, cool. Well, I know you're traveling. I'll let you get back on the road. But and then on the road to Arizona, I got a box headed your way here shortly as well. So you'll get that when you get out there. And yeah.
Awesome, sir. I appreciate you calling me.
Yeah.
It was cool to do this event and come away with the win I wasn't really expecting. And so am I going to see you down at the Baja?
Yes, sir. Yeah, I'll be down there. I'll be down there for a few days. I can't stay there the whole time, but I'll be down there for a few days. And then Sonora Rally is still on the books. So I'll be down for that as well.
Perfect. Well, we'll be making the rounds together, my friend. So
Yes,
I look forward to seeing you for sure.
Awesome. Safe travels. And once again, congrats on the win.
All right, Victor. Thank you, buddy.
All right,
Have a good day.
You too. See ya. Talk.
Okay.
All right. So, second year Cotah Rally?
Well, I helped validate the routes last year, and then this was my first year racing the event.
Nice. And how was it like being on the other side of the table, validating routes versus racing it?
Well, I mean, it's a lot more relaxed just validating a route, of course, and it's interesting to interface with the organizer. But I'm a racer at heart, so I prefer racing. Nice. And that was a very good time. So
nice. Yeah, this was from what I've heard, this year had its challenges. The previous show we were talking about the terrain and possibly weather and stuff like that, and it sounds like you guys got a little bit of everything, right?
Yeah. Well. I mean, the terrain was basically the same as what I had seen last year, but there was a lot of rain and overcast and a lot of dew in the evenings, which we're doing Malimoto and sleeping in tents. So there was a lot of humidity and a lot of mud to deal with, slippery rocks. So it was definitely a lot more difficult than what I had seen in the prior year.
Nice. And so that was, you guys, looking at the time between you and Pearson, you came out second this year. It looks like it was definitely a good rally, but definitely had its challenges. And I think you guys ended up only being 3 minutes apart in the whole thing at the end.
Yeah, that's right. I ended up, I could slowly making time on him. I won 4 out of the 5 stages, but I made just a huge error on a technical HP section. I read the wrong cap heading out of the road book, cost me about 35 minutes. And, the rest of the time I was just trying to make up for that and just in the end wasn't able to do it. So yeah, ended up second. Dave took first, and I know he's been training a lot, so he nailed that section, and, so that's what he needs to be doing when he goes to the Dakar. So, that's great that he did that.
Yeah. And so what was a lot of people that are listening to the show may not know the whole HP side of things.
Yeah. So HP, it's just French for horse piste, and actually the nomenclature has changed recently to OP for off piste. But what that means is, it's an off-road section where you have no roads and you're basically following a compass heading. And, this rally has probably some of the most difficult off-piste sections that I've seen in any rally, because the terrain is super technical, yet you're trying to basically go in a straight line where it's physically not possible. Mm-hmm. And so that's what makes it so complicated in this particular case. So, I mean, we're going through fingers of over mountains, through rutted fingers and valleys and ditches and everything, trying to go in a straight line to get to the waypoint that we need to collect. And unfortunately, I picked up on the wrong heading in my head when I looked into the road book and went completely the wrong direction, about 80 degrees off course for a long ways, and then ended up having to open a waypoint and I still had a long ways to go through this technical terrain just to get to the waypoint. So I took a penalty for that. It cost me a lot of extra time just riding around. And then I was flustered after that and not navigating as well as I normally would either. So, put all that together, the whole situation ended up costing me 35 minutes. Wow. So, but very, very significant. And those things happen sometimes, something similar happened to Ricky last year or the year before in the Dakar. Mm-hmm. And, he made him very, very difficult to recover. I don't think he ever did for the event. So, I mean, it happens, and it happened to me this time, but I learned from it. I always reflect on the mistakes that I've made afterwards, figuring out the root cause of why I made the mistake, and then figuring out what I'm going to do to prevent it in the future.
Mm-hmm.
So
now that's something interesting. I've always thought that for a lot of people, that once they get past the hurdle of like, okay, I'm going to try rally, the next thing that they get stuck on is what to do when lost. And I think HP sections are probably the worst for that, right? Because there's really usually no road, no nothing. You're just kind of picking your way through stuff.
Yeah, once you made a mistake to the magnitude that I did, it's really hard to get unlost. And usually, if I had been on the right heading and I got where I thought I was in range of the waypoint, there's things like gridding, doing a grid, or just knowing that I'm on one side or the other of the waypoint, where I can, put some logic to trying to find that waypoint. But when you've done the massive mistake that I did, I had no choice. But luckily, we're running the rally comp, and I was able to open a waypoint, take a 10-minute penalty for doing so, and I get an arrow and a distance over to the waypoint. And then when I get there, I can, reset my navigation equipment and continue on where I should have been in the first place.
Mm-hmm. And the secret there, right, is all you got to do is get within the open radius, right? Once you open the waypoint, you're going to have the arrow.
Yeah, well, I was several kilometers away from where I should have been at that point. And when I opened it, I had an arrow guiding me to the waypoint, and the distance on the rally comp showing me basically a countdown as I approached it, how far away I was. Now, if I had to come in on the proper direction on this particular waypoint, it was a 400-meter radius. So I would have had to been within 400 meters of that waypoint to get that arrow opened up with the distance that would guide me to the center of the waypoint. And then I would look at the next instruction in the road book and continue on the next heading, looking for the next waypoint.
Mm-hmm. Which, I mean, and that still, even with, as you mentioned, being a mistake and that happening, and it's going to happen. I mean, anybody that gets into rally is eventually going to get into this kind of a situation.
Yep.
Still 35 minutes down, but at the end of the day, the overall was still only a 3-minute gap. So or what was it? 2 minutes? Was it 2 or 3?
It was 2 or 3 minutes, but really, really close. I mean, I was, ever since I made that mistake, I was struggling every day, every minute to make up every second that I could to try to get that lead back. And I just, in the end, just didn't have enough miles or kilometers to make up that time. I was steadily making time, but just wasn't able to overcome that hurdle I'd created for myself.
Well, and that's like when we tell or talk to people. I remember we were down at the Sanking team training, and that was something that was brought up a couple of times about riding over your head to try and make up time and do that stuff. And that's like we were saying, is you're talking about the importance of that. It's like, hey, you know what? It's worth, each waypoint, making sure you get it, taking your time navigating, because, it's easy to go from one mistake to the next if you're trying to make it up time.
Oh yeah, for sure. So, I mean, I was in a situation where I'm doing everything I can to try to make up time, which makes me susceptible to potentially making more mistakes. And then Dave is sitting there, with a comfortable lead, and he's able to relax and make sure he doesn't make any mistakes.
Yeah.
Fortunately, I didn't make any other mistakes, so that's why it was so close in the end. But yeah, definitely, I could have, trying to push so hard, I could have, made another mistake, and then it would have been all over. So
yeah, but that is your experience. I mean, you've done. How many rallies have you done? I mean, aside from creating the rally comp, right? That all the North American rallies use now at this point.
Yeah. I've done. I've done I've been to every Baja rally, every Sonora rally. I didn't race when I introduced the rally comp at each of those events. I didn't race that year, but every other year I've raced those events. I've done the Dakar, the Africa Eco Race, the Australian Safari, Andalusia. Trying to think of other big rallies that I've done. I've done the Coast to Coast rally, the Cotah rally now, Nora rally a few times. The list goes on and on. I've been an enthusiast for 10 or 12 years now, and just doing maybe one major rally per year, and then all the local rallies around here. So I've done a lot of events. I've got a lot of experience. So, but I still make mistakes. That's the way it always is, in rally, and you're always learning. There's always something to learn, which always keeps it interesting. You're never done learning in rally.
Yeah.
So makes it fun all the time.
Right. And with the experience you've done and all that, where does the Cotah rally, like, is there another rally that you've raced that kind of compares to Cotah rally terrain wise?
I would say the next closest thing would be the Yellowstone rally, which I did the last couple of years as well.
Mm-hmm.
And they're very technical rallies, kind of different than anything else, kind of a very different flavor.
Nice.
And then at the Cotah rally, there's a lot of speed zones because it's a fully permitted rally, and they're getting all the government approvals that the government agencies and local authorities are setting speed limits on the race, which makes it a lot different than a typical rally that you would be in. Even though most rallies do have speed zones as you go through a village or a town or a very dangerous area, they might slow you down. But the Cotah rally, for them to get all their permits in place, they had to have a lot of speed zones, basically different levels of speed zone over the entire event.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah. And they did something that was very difficult, and they got all these agencies to say, okay, we'll give you a shot. And yep. So, if they say, and that's typically what at least what I've seen down in Baja, it's usually a ranch owner or a landowner saying, we'll let you through, but no racing, you got to keep it, at reasonable pace. But this is basically what they're saying.
And the rally comp controls that speed with a series of beeps when you're getting close to the speed limit, and then a constant tone when you're over the speed limit, and also you'll start accruing penalties at that point.
Yeah, which is always it's I've heard it from a lot of people to stay right on the beep, stay right on, right at that. Like, the fastest way to the end of the speed zone is to literally be right on the bubble of that beep.
Yeah. And that's one thing that I was doing to try to make up time, was just staying focused. I mean, a tremendous amount of focus to stay right on the edge of the speed limit without going over and accruing penalties, because the penalties way outweigh any gain you might get if you're trying to push it too far, you know?
Yeah, there's no like, okay, I'm going to speed really quick in this section because it's going to net me a better result, overall.
Yeah, none of that. There's no net better result when you're trying to speed. No, you got to ride. No, the only best result you can get is riding as close to the edge as you can. And if you go too far, then it's going to cost you in the end. So it's difficult, to do it for hours on end.
Yeah. Well, and so that's the question that I wanted to ask too, is like, okay, well, let's, stage 3 was where that happened. So throwing that out and just looking at the other stage times consistently, it was almost 10 minutes per stage, 8 to 10 minutes faster than Dave on each of the other stages. Was there do you think there was something, obviously you were doing something better, or you were more efficient at something in particular? Can you? Yeah,
I think I was riding on the edge of the speed limits more, especially after that situation happened where he was more comfortable knowing that he had a nice lead, and he didn't have to push that envelope, knowing that if he pushed the envelope and got speed penalties, well, that might close the gap on him. Mm-hmm. So, I assume that's what he was thinking. Most racers would think that way. So, I'm having to push it. He's able to relax. And, I won the first couple stages before that and put a few minutes, on. And I think it was, I was pushing those. I knew because of the format of the race that the speed zones were going to be an important part of winning and doing my best. So I was focused on the speed, maximizing the speed zones from the beginning. And then there's times when you're not in the speed zone, and it's kind of hard to transition where your speed's being held down, and all of a sudden the pace transitions to a much faster pace because you've gotten into a faster zone. And sometimes it's hard to transition. And I was really focused on making that transition efficiently and quickly.
And that's,
so I'm basically going from a non-race mode, being slowed down in a slow speed limit, to a race mode, and knowing that I needed to, transition quick and making sure I did that. Where other racers might get lulled into, the slower speed, and it might take them a while to get back and, get into a faster pace.
So, and that's what we're talking about, like where the speed zone might bump up from being a 35 kilometers or 40 or 50 kilometers an hour, and then all of a sudden it jumps up to 90. Is that like what you're talking? Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
So anticipating that.
And I had thought, I thought typically when I'm racing, especially in rally, there's a lot of thought and planning and that goes into, what you're going to do at a specific rally. And typically when I go into a rally, I think about what the parameters are for that rally and what I'm going to do to use my skills to the best, to my advantage. So I had thought about all that ahead of time, going into this rally, on how I was going to do well with the limitations of primarily the speed limit, So that's what I did. Yeah. And I don't know if other people were doing that. I heard comments from other people saying, that I was having trouble transitioning. Like I said, from lower speed, it took me a while to get going again. Well, that hurt them, especially because they hadn't thought of it ahead of time. So they kind of learned that, after a couple of days of doing the event, which isn't really what you want to do. Yeah.
Yeah. I can see it, just like it's the same as I've talked about this previously on the show, like coming into a speed zone, the anticipating of the speed zone, right? There's the guys that anticipate it, and then they show up at 1 or 2 kilometers an hour over the speed limit, and they're able to rope it in quickly to get right on the bubble. And then there's the guys that completely spaced and came in, race speed. It's like they almost just completely ignored the note in the road book that there was a start of a speed zone there. And then obviously they go straight into penalties.
Yeah, right. And that's the other side of it. I was talking about transitioning into a higher speed zone, but there's also the transition from a fast one to a slow one. And because if you come into a speed zone really fast, a lower speed zone really fast, and you're like 5-10K over the speed limit speed, you accrue massive penalties. So that's a really bad thing to do. So I'm actually very cautious when entering a slower speed zone. I probably, 100 meters or 200 meters before that, I start slowing down. I don't try to gain time with charging into a slower speed zone. That's definitely a losing strategy as far as I'm concerned. Some guys try to do it, but I prefer to slow down, make sure I'm entering that slower speed zone at the right speed, and then start to maximize my pace, after that.
Yeah, I think I've seen it. We've seen it a few times, and
So that happened at the rally too. Many people came in after the first day with some very significant speed penalties, and they realized afterwards, what they needed to do different. Now I do a rally comp, training at before the event, and I point some of that stuff out. What they need to do, how they need to handle those speed zones. Don't come charging into it. And then when they come in and at the end of the stage, and I'm like, well, I told you, but let me explain it again. Here's what you need to do so that you're not accruing these massive penalties. And then everybody, by the second stage, or second or third stage, they've learned their lesson, and we don't see that anymore.
Yeah. They stop being so brave coming into the speed zone.
Yeah. Now, there are other people there that have experience with the rally comp. I mean, Dave's used the rally comp many times in the past, and others as well that were there.
Yeah.
But the guys that hadn't, or either they were daydreaming and didn't realize what the penalties would be if they did that, or they just didn't understand the way that it worked. So that's an expensive learning process there.
Yeah. Well, and and we've seen it, we've seen it a couple of times as a race director formerly, and working with the rally comp files and seeing all that, and being able to take a peek into where they were at in in their speed coming into a speed zone, and you can see, that's like, I didn't see it, or it wasn't clearly marked in the road book. And I go, well, the road book was there. The rally comp was warning. I mean, it's like you had all of these things going for you and you just ignored it, or, and I get it. I mean, as racers, right. You're hot, you're coming in, you're focused on speed and making it happen. And well, it's easy
and different devices actually are, have different algorithms built into them. Now, apparently, the one at the Dakar that Ricky and those pro guys were used to, they could charge right in and on a full buzzer, as long as they slowed down, in a reasonable amount of time, they wouldn't get any penalties. Now, the rally comp doesn't work like that. It gives you 2 seconds to slow down. Well, if you're coming in, 20 kilometers over the pace, 2 seconds isn't enough to slow down to get you under the limit. So, but they learned, they came in their first event using the rally comp, realized it was a different device and reacted appropriately, and then didn't have any, any of those kind of penalties after that.
Yeah, they adapted quickly to that, which, because I know I don't know how, like, I'm thinking, right, from the race organization side of it, if you know that your device will allow for more leeway coming in hot to a speed zone, then you start the speed zone maybe a little bit earlier, a few meters earlier, so that they're going to rope it in because you need to be at this line, you need to be at that speed. Where at least
that could be. Yep, they may move the waypoint a little bit because of that situation. Yep.
Where in this case, I mean, no, it's like the speed zone needs to start at this property line or at this particular line in the sand because you're crossing into whatever territory or whatever it is, in this case, that's exactly where it's at. So I think it adds a challenge to it. I've heard a couple of people post, kind of talking about, or I've gotten and seen some comments about the speed zones, and it seems like all these speed zones involved at the Cotah rally, and but it's kind of necessary. I mean, we're racing. There's a rally, a fully permitted functioning rally in the U.S. right now, and these are the rules they have to abide by.
I hope that they can, they've already got, relationships with the local authorities, but, they have changes in those people, as elections happen, and then they've got to start all over. And that kind of happened to them in some cases this year, where they were dealing with new people, and that pushed the speed limit down from what it was last year. And hopefully, as they build these relationships and they understand the level of safety that they've got built into the organization, that they'll, maybe open it back up. That's my hope anyways.
Yeah. I mean, I think that a lot of them, especially like the BLMs, the Bureau of Land Management, they've had to deal with a lot of race, the typical off-road sprint race stuff. And the word is out because it's happened for so many years, and they understand how dangerous those events can be. And so this whole rally thing is new to them, and they don't necessarily understand it. So I agree with you. I think a few more events where they see that, hey, you know what? We don't have to deal with spectators. We don't have to deal with, or there could be spectators, but it's a very different crowd, and it's a much more controlled environment. Maybe they'll loosen up the grip a little bit and let the guys go.
Yeah, but overall, what the Cotah organization has accomplished is just phenomenal. I mean, when Mike started calling me about it, maybe three plus years ago, and he was telling me what he was trying to do, I just thought, I don't know how he's going to accomplish this. But then he called me and said, "Hey, I got it all done. I'm ready to go." And I was like, "Wow, that is amazing."
Yeah.
And he pulled it off, and for an organization in their second year, everything they had was just perfect this year. Unbelievable. And they did a great job of organization, great job of safety, all the fueling of the bikes, all the bivouacs that we stayed at, everybody was camping. They had a box that they had to have everything that they needed for the whole event in that box, and then the race organization would transport those boxes every day, and everything just flowed so smoothly. It was absolutely incredible. So my hat's off to those guys, because they did a wonderful job.
Yeah.
And I would recommend the rally to anyone and everyone. It's just very, very fun event. Yeah. Very different than anything else that I've done as well.
Nice. Well, and that's, you got, and that says a lot. I mean, considering the rally resume that you've put together and all the different rallies and stuff that you've done. So, I mean, I think that I know there's a lot of people I've talked to, offline and about the events and where to get started and all that stuff. What the Malamoto thing was it really a challenge? Just the idea of having to live out of a box for a week? I mean, is it fairly easy to prepare? They do a really good job of giving everybody a list of everything they need to do it. And what was nice for me is when I do a lot of adventure riding, so I camp off my bike, and pretty much everything they required was just what I normally carry. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, it made it easy for me. Somebody starting from scratch, they tell you need a tent and a tent and a sleeping bag, such and such a sleeping bag, and this, that, and the other. And then you're trying to make that all fit in the box. And when I first started, the box is huge. I thought, man, I'm going to have so much room here. I'm going to bring my big bedroll, not the one I bring on my bike. I thought I was going to bring a full and sleep like a queen or a king. And in the end, there was no room for that, for sure. And then as the week goes on, the box got more and more disorganized, but at the same time, you're eating your food that's in the box. So that freed up a little extra space, and I was still able to make everything fit, even after the box became a total mess. But they give you a list of everything you need. And if you get all that stuff, you'll be ready for tech inspection. And tech inspection is quite, significant, many items. Mm-hmm. And I spent several hours getting through tech. Luckily I had brought like my stock exhaust. You have to run a stock exhaust. I thought I could get away with a forest approved. I repacked my silencer. They do a sound check. Mm-hmm. And I had repacked my silencer to make it as quiet as possible. And I thought the forest approved exhaust would work, but no, they wouldn't accept that. So I had brought my stock. I had to put it back on, and I was really concerned that was going to affect my performance, which on high speed stuff is where I really felt that. But most of the rally, it didn't really impact the performance of the bike, so that was fine. No bib mooses. The bike has to be DOT approved. It's not like they're making these rules for everybody. It's based on the regulations that they have to meet to be able to put on the rally. So the bike has to be fully DOT approved, which bib mooses aren't. So you have to run tubes. And surprisingly, I know of only one flat in the entire event. Yeah. So, that's pretty good. I mean, if you prep your wheels right with tubes, mm-hmm. You can go a long ways, but pretty much the only thing that'll give me a flat is a nail. And it happens, but, and not so much when you're on the dirt. So, well, and that says something, because I think that makes a lot of people nervous, right? It's like, okay, well, I think maybe what's happened is people have gotten so used to the mooses that they've forgotten all of these, trade secrets of how to keep a tube alive, and working. And so for everybody that ran, if you can't recall, like, there was sections where there was just like everybody seemed to be parked on the other side with flats, then the terrain isn't that bad, I mean, relatively speaking, right? That it's manageable and you can make it out without having a flat and without having to worry about, okay, I have to run a moose.
Yeah. And you got to run good tubes. You got to set it up right. You need to run, more pressure than you normally would, because there's a lot of sharp edge rocks and ledges and things out there on that terrain. And we used to, in Baja for years, a bib moose would melt in the rear. I don't know if they weren't quite to the level they are now. So we always ran tubes in the rear. We were able to run bib mooses in the front. But we ran at Best in the Desert and Baja for years, ran tubes in the rear. And I can say we never, ever had a flat on our race bike. So it can be done, and you just need to set it up right.
Yeah. So you got so people looking to do it, you just got a little bit of studying to do on setting up tubes properly to make sure they they have fun with it. But I mean, other than that, I mean, the bike, right? What are some of the? I mean, you got to have a mirror, you got to have high low beam turn signals, I think.
Yeah, well, I mean, you have to have it registered street legal bike, and that covers all of those things. One thing that I didn't have, which I didn't have a horn on my bike. I originally did, and I don't know, it wasn't there, and so I was really in trouble. But I went to Walmart and I bought a little bicycle horn and mounted on my bike, and I made it through tech with that. So, I mean, where there's a will, there's a way, I guess. So.
Yeah. I mean, absolutely. I mean, whatever it takes to get past the tech. But I mean, so it doesn't. The cool part about that, and what I see is that okay, you don't need a full rally bike. You can just go take your EXC or FES, or variations thereof, CRF with the plate on it, and throw some, nav equipment on it, and then you're good to go.
Yeah. Yep. You need an odometer and a road book. They're not doing any electronic stuff at the Cotah rally, and they don't have any intention of changing at this point anyway. Or you could just, the rally comp gives you all the features you need to be able to navigate, except for the road book. So you could use a road book holder. We would put the rally comp on your bike. It's got the speed, the odometer, and the cap. Matter of fact, I run just 2 rally comps. I have one set for odometer and speed, and the other one set for my cap. And that's what I run. So there's ways to streamline it where you don't have to get too deep into it to see if you like it or not. But of course, you'd want to do some practice before you got there.
Yeah, just run some basic road books and just familiarize yourself with it.
Yeah, well, I can say there were some guys there at the event that had never, they showed up at the event, had never done a road book before. There was one and maybe 2 guys that had never, ever done a road book before. And one of them had some trouble occasionally, but he found his way. I mean, he made it.
And I mean, and this is, it's subjective, right? Because everybody reads the road book maybe slightly different or gets inside the head of the road book creator. But what do you think about the road books? I mean, are they straightforward? I mean, you've seen a lot of road books. You've done a lot of work on road books.
Yeah, the navigation wasn't particularly difficult. Only that HP section would be difficult for somebody just learning navigation. And that was on the 3rd day. So they would have had 2 days of learning. But yeah, the road books were spot on. There were no, it's not uncommon to have a rally where at a certain place the road book may be broken or difficult for everybody to understand, and a bunch of people get lost and then have difficulty getting themselves back on course. But that was not the case here. That the whole road book was spot on. Mike did a really good job on the road books, and then they were all validated prior to the event, which made add that extra little level of detail.
Yeah. And what, so that you mentioned that a couple of times, the validation side of things, what is that? I mean, for the rally comp and for you and any event, what is validation?
What we're talking about when we say we're validating the road book is the road book creator hands the road book to an individual who knows nothing of the course or the route, and hopefully their rally comp that they'll be using at the event as well. And they go out and run the course, and then mark or highlight any issues that they see in the road book, and then the creator can make the required changes. The other side of it, like I said, is the rally comp, validating that all the waypoints are in the right places and that they're all working properly. Because they may have a road, for instance, let's say they placed a waypoint and accidentally got it on the other side of a fence line where you can't get to it. I mean, that would be a big problem. Or maybe they entered the speed limit wrong, where you're supposed to be going 70 kilometers an hour, and instead they entered it at 25. and that's not only, it's a problem for the racer having to go so slow, but it's really dangerous when there's cars that are going significantly faster than the pace that the bikes can go. So they'll run the whole route, make any markings in the road book, and the creator can go through, make sure that everything works properly, and fix any issues so that on race day everything works properly.
Nice. And yeah, I mean, and so that's obviously going to be a very important part of it, since it's easy to get lost. You don't, depending on where you're at, especially if you're not at the front of the field, right? If you don't have tracks to follow, it just gets increasingly harder.
Yeah, right. Well, I mean, it's possible that there's a missing instruction in the road book. That's not uncommon. A missing instruction, or like I said, a speed zone that was entered improperly.
Mm-hmm.
They've got gas stops that the rally comp does a countdown for 15, in this case, 15 minutes. So they've got to make sure all that works properly for the event. There's unmanned stops where you have to stop for 3 seconds at a stop sign. And you just want to make sure that when the event comes around and everybody's at race pace, that all that stuff works properly.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And that's, I think, one of the because I've seen it in other events, they will remain nameless. I've seen the difference between when they do that and when they don't do that. And how it goes down, it could lead to a lot of frustration, obviously, with the racers. It could literally throw a stage away, if it's not.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's that important, to do that.
And then the safety side of it as well,
Yeah, absolutely.
There's safety situations that can be created with people getting off course, with maybe danger areas that have happened. That's another part of validation on the route, is maybe the person that made the road book, either knows the area or they wrote it 3, 4, 6 months ago. So you want somebody validating it closer to the event. So if there's any new washouts or any new dangers that have been created, or areas you can't pass, maybe there's been some construction or a fence put up, that all that gets picked up and added into the road book so that it's proper for the event.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah. No, I agree. We've talked about it. Also, I know that we've talked about that at length in Mexico with Dave Peckham from Rally Navigator. And formerly ICO, but the same conversation, it's like the importance of having somebody validate the routes and going through that is absolutely huge.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
And I know Baja Rally's getting ready. I think they just came back from doing the reconnaissance after this last hurricane that came out, and that event's only 2 weeks, 2 weeks out. So that, I know it's going to be a big difference. I was there for was it the last, I'm trying to remember what the name of the storm, but it was like 3 or 4 storms in succession. And I mean, they wiped out entire stages, and that was huge. I remember Scotty was out validating stages and making changes literally while we're, doing scrutineering and getting everybody checked in.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, there's been a lot of damage from the storm on the route, but from what I hear, they haven't had to change the route. They've just had to add a bunch of safety waypoints they'll alert the riders as they approach that there's a danger. And then they can slow down and be prepared and react appropriately. But at the same time, apparently some of the washes that are pretty beat up, they're in Baja where people are riding them all the time. They've got completely smoothed over by the water. So some of it's going to be just beautiful riding. Oh yeah, some
virgin sand washes, and I mean I think they got enough water. Or there may still be some wet sand under there. So. Still maybe.
Oh, well, that's another great thing. Sure. Yeah.
Some hero dirt, the fuel mileage goes a little further.
Yep, for sure.
Yeah, that was a good one. And was there a lot of sand? Did you guys get a lot of sand in the Cotah rally? I mean, was that?
No, not really. It was mostly rock and dirt. After it rained, there was a lot of, mud in certain areas, but there was sand sprinkled over the terrain, but it wasn't like we had any dunes or any what I would call a sandy trail.
Mm-hmm.
So
nice.
Not a lot of sand. No, it's mostly mountains.
Oh, okay. Well, and I mean, some pretty awesome views. I've saw some of the pictures, the typical, some of the guys,
phenomenal.
Yeah, that's what I've heard. And that another one of the things, besides the organization and some of, how the event goes. But yeah, the terrain and the views and the stuff that they get to see out there. So, I'm curious.
Oh yeah. You get to see things that most people never experience in a lifetime.
That's how rally should be, right?
Right. Yeah.
Not a lot of people know spectators, and usually there's something about rallies. I mean, it seems like, being down in Baja, and that was my favorite question to ask, how was the route? How was everything? And so many people, it's the same thing. I've never been down this road, or I've never seen this road. And it seems like with rally, you're allowed access into places that you don't get if it was a regular type race, sprint race.
Yeah, well, that's one of the essence of if you're building a road book, is to bring people on the most interesting, most beautiful, fun, best riding stuff that you can possibly find. That's the goal when you're writing the road book. So that's what usually happens.
Yeah. Well,
you're not just pounding down whoops that everybody goes down and that part of the score races or something like that. These are special areas that have been handpicked to take the people into. So I mean, you'll experience at the Baja Rally, you'll experience parts of Baja that most people never see. Yeah. And it's really, really nice.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that was definitely always the conversation, when people were coming back into the bivouac or coming to the finish line and talking to them, or the group. I remember there was always the group of guys that would stop for smoke breaks and pictures and all that stuff. And then I'd see, I'd be somewhere with internet and I'm scrolling through my Instagram feed and I'm seeing, pictures that these guys are taking out on the course. And I'm like, are you guys planning on coming back? Should we close the finish line?
Right. Yeah. But I've had conversation with, I've raced down there for years and with other racers that have been down there for years, and they come back and after a stage, talking about seeing stuff that they've never seen before, and that's one of the great things about it. Yeah. Is you're not just going down and riding the same terrain that everybody's always ridden down in Baja. So that's really nice.
Yeah.
And then the same goes for the Cotah, that if you went out riding in these areas trying to find the stuff that these guys did, you would never find it.
Nice.
These guys know the area, and they spent a lot of time doing reconnaissance to pick out the best terrain possible to cover 5 days of rally racing. Yeah. So you can't beat it.
No. And I know Mike puts a lot of effort into that, because he's I know up there in that area, we've talked at length about it, but he has a very limited schedule because of the weather. It either gets snowed in or it gets too hot, in some places. So
yeah.
So for him to put a route together, or those guys him and Scott to put a route together and get all of that, squared away is impressive. So on the calendar for next year, I'll be out there.
Well, hope to see you there, Victor.
Yeah. So cool. So, all right. Last question. I like asking this question a lot of people, but
okay.
All right. It's an easy one though. What do you think is an entry barrier to getting into rally? Like, is there something that you've identified that holds people back from trying it or just getting into it?
Well, I think the cost is an entry barrier on buying the navigation equipment and then having to spend a day putting it on your bike, and then if you want to turn your bike back into what it was before, another day to take it off. So I mean, that's what I've always thought the entry barrier was. And in actuality, that's where I started developing the rally comp, because I thought just the price of a resettable odometer was insane. So I was going to just develop an inexpensive odometer. And once I got that done, then I thought, well, I can make it do this and I can make it do that. And it just grew and grew and grew into what it is now. But I think that's the biggest hurdle is the cost of all these devices. And now there's some you can use an iPhone to do some of that stuff. It's not really, or you can't use it really for racing. I suppose you could, but there's some other things you can do, or an iPad to use as your road book. There's some things you can do to reduce the cost and help overcome that hurdle. But most people, when they try it, just love it. That's one of the great things about it. And I think, I've been trying to promote rally in the U.S. for years, or helping every way I can, introducing the rally comp. But a lot of people in the U.S., you would ask them if they were interested in doing a rally, and their initial response was, I'm not going to go get lost in the desert, and potentially die. Well, with the rally comp and being able to open waypoints and the tracking features and different things, that fear is now gone. So you don't hear that anymore. You hear more that I'm not going to spend $1,000 to try this thing out, So we as a community need to figure out how to overcome that hurdle, for more people. But I see the rally community growing. Definitely, it's growing rapidly at this point. So that's real encouraging.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And like you said, as electronic devices become easier to turn into something that viable, like that you can use for rally. And like you said, I mean, not that it's going to be race quality, but it's enough to go out and, I'm going to use this, the term, it's enough to go out and get lost, but not really that. It's enough to go out and get going. And, I think about, I always
get your feet wet and see what it's all about and see if you really like it.
Yeah. And then
I'm sure there's people that might go out and spend that $1,000 and decide, hey, this isn't for me. And that's unfortunate, but if you don't try, you don't know.
Yeah. And I think for that, it's maybe like at that point it was a lack of plan. It's like, okay, well, I'm going to go out and try it. But if you don't realize, like, okay, well, wait a minute, who's going to make road books? What class? Like, there has to be a little bit more planning so that you don't have a bad experience with it. Because like Matthew Glade said, just look at the market for used gear for rally. It's virtually non-existent. I can't go on eBay right now and find a used ICO.
Oh, right. Yeah.
You go on Facebook and there's rally specific Facebook groups, and every once in a while something comes up, but it's not like there's just like, oh yeah, hey, I tried getting out of the sport. You see more bikes going up for sale because like, hey, I tried it. It wasn't for me. Bike's too big. It scared me. And
yeah.
You see more of that.
Well, I guess that's a good sign too. I hadn't looked at it from that perspective, but yeah, that's interesting that you don't see any used equipment out there available. So I think most people that try it end up liking it and probably stick with it. Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And based on the feedback and the messages and the stuff that's going, yeah, for sure. I mean, there's more and more people looking to get into it. It's just, the plan, right? How are we going to get into this? What are we going to do? So it's actually, pays dividends, right? Or, where it actually is like, okay, this is actually entertaining. I actually want to do more of this. So we'll see.
Yeah. And awesome. with the way, we're losing land for riding on a consistent basis, and the rally format accommodates that you're riding a street legal bike, that you can ride a section of desert or mountain or forest, whatever, and then you can transition from one area to the next on the road, because each area isn't big enough to support the entire event. So you can put together a significant event that's patches of land connected by roads. And so I think that's really where the future of racing is going to go.
Yeah. Yeah. And I agree with that. And that's actually a very valid point. I'm just imagining, it's like, okay, well, if it was not a street legal bike, right, going back and said, okay, well, we want to ride this section and this section. Now we got to find a dirt road that communicates both of them. Well, that dirt road happens to suck. And it just or it's this big loop that you got to do just to get over to this other section where you could have jumped on the highway.
And as we lose more riding land, I mean, that's going to become more and more of a problem. So that's why I think the rally format is really the future of racing in many respects. At least long distance racing, multi-days, it's going to be hard to find any contiguous pieces of land that you can race on in the future.
Yeah, I agree with that. Especially here in California, they seem to be putting up gates faster than they're taking them down. So,
yep, absolutely.
Well, actually, that's right. They don't take the gates down. Once they're up, they're up. So yeah, not going to work.
Yeah.
Nice. Well, awesome, sir. I appreciate you jumping on with me, and we'll get. We're going to see you down in Baja, right? A couple weeks.
Absolutely, yeah. I'll be in Baja, and I'll be at Sonora. I'm working on prepping rally comps, getting ready on that side of it, and then also trying to race these events. So hopefully I can put my race effort together for both of those events as well. But definitely they're supporting the rally comp. We'll be at the Baja and Sonora rally.
Awesome. Oh yeah, that'll be fun.
Yep.
Nice.
Hope to see you there as well.
Yeah,
Victor.
That's the game plan. Well, we'll see.
Okay.
All right, Mike. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks. Bye.
See ya. All right, that is a wrap for the Chasing Waypoints podcast. I hope you guys enjoyed this week's episode. Do not forget to tag us, follow along on the social medias at Chasing Waypoints on Instagram and on Facebook. Hope you guys have a great week. Remember, keep it shiny side up. Tune into the next episode. Tag us, do all of that fun stuff. Share, let's get this rally thing going. And of course, do not forget, it'll make sense when you get there. Enjoy the ride. See you guys. Catch you next week.